Hi, this is Mark Wheat, and I'm going to talk for a few minutes about some of the new alarm management functionality in version 6.1. A lot of our customers are moving over from our version 5.5 and 6.0 and really don't have a good understanding of some of the features that we have with 6.1 as it relates to alarm management. One of the things that we've tried to do in this version is to really extend the functionality and allow the customer to determine how they want to be alarmed and when to be alarmed. So one of the first things that we're going to do is show you some of the different health roll-up scenarios. And then we're going to move into some of the knowledge base entries and select a particular metric or two that we want to alarm on and really kind of round that out for you. So we've had Netuitive up and running for a little bit over here. This is a standard dashboard screen. We can see that we do have an issue with some of the MEs here with heavy workload. So we'll just kind of address some of the things that are going on there. But a good way to get started is really to click on the Trusted Incidents screen and come down to the knowledge base. When you do this, you're going to get a listing of all the knowledge base entries that have been provided to you by Netuitive. If you have created any knowledge base entries on your own, that will be indicated with a different icon out here. And you can also filter these by, if they're Netuitive, they're custom, or any the particular knowledge base entries. One of the things that I'm going to be looking for right now is, which knowledge base entry is really being fired off the most. And I'm running a demo database, so as I'm looking here and count the past 24 hours, none of these guys are really sticking out. I do have one heavy workload over here, which has been fired upon 11 times. With some of our customers, these things might happen thousands of times depending upon the number of MEs that they're managing. And it's really good just to note, hey, these knowledge bases are being fired extensively. And if they are, it's a good opportunity to go in and adjust those knowledge base entries to make sure it's more relevant to your environment or not. So I can see that heavy workload is one of them. Another big one that usually gets hit is volatile workload. If you're dealing with a lot of servers and things like that, you'll have these periods of bursty activity, and that might kick off the volatile workload knowledge base. But those are two that we see a lot of. So I've kind of looked here. I've seen that the only one that's really getting triggered a lot is heavy workload. And this is also a really good opportunity to sit down and look at some of these knowledge base entries and say, and determine which ones we want to use to fire off our alarming scheme in the future. And when you're first starting out with your alarm management, it's a really good rule of thumb just to start with one particular knowledge base entry or one particular alarm and get the feel for it. Understand, what it takes in order to set this thing up, let it run, get it where you want it to go, and then work with your system administrators or your Tiger teams or whoever ultimately is consuming the alarms to help you understand here's the type of information that's important to us. And as you get that, you can come back and turn on those particular knowledge bases or even create new knowledge bases in case there's nothing that really matches those criteria. So what I'm seeing here is I would really like to start out with CPU utilization %. So I'm going to kind of write that one down and say, well, that's the first alarm I want to work with. So we've had a look at this. We've been able to discern which alarms we want to start with, and also we've noticed that high volatility and workload or heavy workload utilization is one that's being hit a lot. So we're going to go from here into the administration screen and down to configuration option. And I'm going to scroll down a little bit to the health rollup section. This is new in version 6.1. And I'm going to click on edit. And we give you three options here. I mean, you've ultimately got control over how you want to work with your health rollup, but we've got the statistics based, which is the same type of deviation monitoring that we looked for in versions 4X, version 5.0, even version 6. So you can turn that on and operate just like you always have. Okay. We also have a hybrid mode, and hybrid mode gives you a little bit of the functionality of version 6.1 with the functionality that we previously had. So it's going to give you the ability to still alarm on deviations, but it's also going to give you the ability to create alarms and alarm based on knowledge base entries as well. So it kind of gives you a stepping stone into ultimately what you want to get to, which is the problem-based health roll-up. And I'm going to jump right in and just go straight to problem-based. So I'm going to come over here and click on that. And what it's going to do for us is it's going to give us these settings that are based for our problem-based roll-up. Interesting things here, the SLO is going to be summed. The statistics are turned off, okay? You can turn on and off availability here, but I mean, this is really what we're trying to do here. The problems are summed, the SLOs are summed, statistics are off. Okay, so we're going to submit this, and what this is going to do for us is it's going to say, from now on, when we go through the alarming, when we find deviations, when we look for things that are problems, we're going to run everything through the knowledge base, and if it matches a knowledge base entry, at that point we can continue to alarm. Okay, so now that we've done that, we're going to come back over here to trusted incidents and go back down to knowledge base. Okay, so we've set up the health roll-up to be problem based. Now what I'm going to do is basically turn off all of these knowledge base entries. You can see they're all enabled right now. I've clicked on the check mark and it's selected all of these. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this one off for CPU utilization percent because I'm going to work with that one. I'm going to scroll to the bottom of the screen, and on the action drop down box I'm going to select disable and submit. Okay, a little verification screen. Yes, I want to do this. And now you can see that none of these knowledge base entries are in fact enabled except for the CPU utilization percent. So this opens this up. Basically it says unless the alarm that we've solved the deviation on, unless the ME that's having a deviation matches CPU utilization percent, we're not going to generate an alarm. Okay, we're still going to show incidents. We're still going to do things. We're just not going to send you alarms. So I'm going to click on CPU utilization percent, and this brings us into the knowledge-based editor. And this is a fairly new thing with version 6.0, and we've extended it a little bit with 6.1. But here we can see total utilization percent. The rule is if CPU utilization is greater than 80, it's going to issue a real-time upper deviation. Okay. For a lot of folks, this is all that it takes. You can say, you know what, anytime CPU utilization is over 80, go ahead and trigger an alarm for me. That's great, but personally, I would want to modify that just a little bit. So if you want to modify one of the out-of-the-box knowledge base entries, it's really easy. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, you can click on Copy Knowledge Base Entry. And when you do that, it creates a copy and you can rename it. So we'll say this is CPU utilization percent, my initials. And it gives you the ability to create a severity. So within this critical situation, that's going to have a direct impact to your health score. So the amount of severity is going to equal the amount of impact that you're going to have to your health. And if we do critical, I believe it's a 75% bump or drop. And we're going to enable this, and then we could also create a tag here. So the tag could be CPU. Okay, so anybody that's interested in receiving CPU alarms can subscribe just to the tag CPU. And over here we can give a workload condition where we could say, well, if workload on whatever we're managing is above a certain percent, let's go ahead and create the deviation. But I'd rather do something a little more specific. Here, when I click on the Deviations tab, if you notice we've got the CPU utilization percent already there, and it says the actual value is greater than 80. You know what? 80 is low for me. I'm going to change that to 95%. And also over here we can see that that this is going to happen in real time, or we can do contextual thresholds. Okay, so as you know, Netuitive is going to take these key performance metrics and it's going to compare it to other key performance metrics and learn what's normal based on their relationship. So when we get something that's at the upper of real-time and contextual, at that point I'm going to say, yeah, this is something that I'm interested in. I also have the ability to do this for forecasted as well as policies and just to click everything on, but I'm going to go with this for right now. There's also some other features that you can do here. For instance, maybe I want to filter this a little further by saying if CPU utilization percent is at a certain level and my run queue length is at a certain level, at that point fire this knowledge base entry and let me know. So I can come over here and select the model that I want to pull this other instance from. And you know what? I think I'm going to just go down. I know that that is an option in Unix. So I'll go to Unix OS and select that particular model. And once you do that, it's going to give you the different metrics that are available within this. And I'm going to look for run queue. I think it's down towards the bottom. Yep, run queue size. And I'm going to add an additional component to this knowledge base for run queue. And on run queue, I'm just going to, this is just a stab here, I'm going to say if run queue is over 6 and it's the real-time deviation, add that to what's got to be happening within this knowledge base in order for me to trigger. So you can build this out and have multiple criteria within this one knowledge base entry, which is pretty nice. Now, if you want additional control, I know that a lot of our users in version 6.0 and even in 5.5 had gotten into using some of the Groovy code to give you complete and utter control over the conditions in which you would launch an alarm. You can click on this Advanced tab in the upper right-hand corner, and if you notice, you've got two screens up here, or two sections. One is the evaluation and one is the recommendation. And within this evaluation area, what it has done is basically taken the information that you had on the previous screen and it's brought it over here in a format that you can modify. Now, this is nice because you can add additional Groovy code which can stipulate things. For instance, one of the things that we've done most recently is determine, hey, before you actually generate this alarm, make sure that this is an incident and not just a deviation. So you can programmatically tell that, or you can say if I've got a deviation that is a major or minor or critical, at that point run through this. If it's not at that level, just discard it and don't even go any further. So you've got pretty much complete control programmatically with this advanced screen. But one thing that you need to consider is if you make changes here in the advanced screen, you can't go back and modify those with the simple GUI that we were using just a moment ago. So just keep that in mind. So I'm going to come back over here to the deviations. We've got our deviations set up. I'm going to click on the recommendation. At this point, it's got a standard out-of-the-box recommendation for what you should do when you receive this type of alarm. This can be user modified. It can be extended, and additionally you can also add additional metrics to what's going to be listed in that recommendation. So it's not just the variables but also the deviation stuff. So you can throw in, this is at a contextual upper area. This is run queue size actual because we pulled that over from the run queue. But basically format the recommendation to something that's going to make sense for you guys. If you have your own custom run book or a knowledge base or something like that, maybe you could link in some of that information or actually reference where to go to further process this. So once we've made all the changes that we want to make to this particular knowledge base entry, it's just a matter of clicking the Save button, and now we have a new knowledge base entry out here. It's CPU utilization percent. -MW. I'm going to bring it out over here, and we can see that this is for Unix OS because I included that run queue from that particular model, and it is enabled. So that's just a real quick run through of how you can limit the types of things that you're going to be alarming on. The next step would be to run this for several cycles or days and make sure that the data that's coming through is actually what you want to see, and it's keying and giving you the right responses and things that you're looking for. And as you feel comfortable with what you've done with this particular knowledge base entry, you can go through and start to turn on and work with some of the other knowledge base entries. And you can also create your own knowledge base entry at any point in time. Ultimately, what you want to do is have a handful of these turned on and working, and then you want to work with the system administrators or the people that are going to be the end consumers of the alarms and say, well, what is it that you would like to see? and just let them help guide you to how you would go through and create these knowledge bases. If you have any questions, please email us. You can reach me at training@netuitive.com. And also we have a great support staff and lots of online documentation. Hope this helped.